Okay.
All right, once again, I see a couple new faces already. Everyone's unmuted. So if you need to mute yourself, you can unmute yourself and speak up. It's been working really well. Thank you to everyone for, being so cordial. I apologize for the demolition derby in the background. The format of this info session is going to be led by Susan Benzik and Sarah King, the chair people of the Bylaws Committee. They are going to kind of run through what their plan is, the issues that their committee has identified as being most important to address. And I believe I'll let them do their intro, but we really just want to get different viewpoints, different opinions out on the table and start this conversation. I believe it's important that something be written in the bylaws. Exactly what that is, I think, is really up to the democratic process of whatever the majority of members feel it is. So, we have the absence of rules right now, and that is putting us in a predicament. So the rules can be whatever we decide they should be. So with that, I'll turn it over to Susan and Sarah, and I will be back to share some images on my screen.
They're not back in yet, Charlie.
Well, they're not. Oh boy.
They're having a little trouble.
I'm not.
I think it might be trouble. Some people probably, like I did this at first too. I clicked the first link instead of the second link. So the email
Okay.
I sent.
Did it say meeting in progress?
The first one said meeting in progress. So they just need to click the.
They're in now. Yes, I told them to click the second one.
Great.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, we're turning over to the bylaws.
Yeah, Sarah, you missed my really great intro, but basically take it away.
All right, well, sorry we were not able to jump in as quickly as everybody else because we were having just a moment of technical difficulties. But Susan and I are here to introduce this phase 2 process. So Susan's actually going to start, and we'll be looking forward to your participation.
Hi, everybody. I'm just going to quickly give you a little background, sort of, you've all probably know it anyways, but to reinforce what we're working on now and what we have to deal with. So I think it's always good to remember, like, there are people who think, well, why has this become such a big deal? And they don't want to really spend time concentrating on it, but things aren't like the old days. For many decades, nobody had to think about, whether there were new member fees. No one paid attention to the Connecticut statutes, and we never had to worry about a membership cap. Membership just seemed to flow from one generation to another, and in most cases followed the natural pattern where children inherited from their parents. But times have definitely changed, and all these factors are now very relevant. We have new member fees. Those came into being in 1998 at $750 and stayed that way until 2008 when they were raised to $1,500 and stayed at $1,500 until 2020, and now they're higher. Well, also the Connecticut general statutes, I don't think we ever referenced them but in 2012, they were revised, and those are the laws that we now have to abide by. And they actually say, regarding transfer of membership, the Connecticut law provides there are no transfer rights unless they are contained in the bylaws, and membership terminates on death. Harsh, but that's what it says. The number of members, we all know we've reached the 200 cap, and now in 2021, I think we're around 215. And of course, new member fees going forward will perhaps dwindle because we won't have new members. So that's tied also to the number of members we have. So all these changes, these are significant changes that have happened over the last 2 decades. So sometimes I hear that people are sick of bylaws or they're tired of surveys. I get it, I understand that, but the questions we have to deal with are really critical right now. And I just want to also point out that the committee is very thankful that in the winter months, you all got involved in, participating, voting, and it actually turned out to be a very successful amendments because in doing them and getting them passed, we avoided a major risk that could have happened to our beach. And while we didn't want to go over the 200 cap, we were able to seal it at a certain number. And now we have control over the number of members in our organization. So we're thankful of past participation and hope that you'll be willing to share your participation again in this round. So that's basically what I had to say.
And then I'll just pick up from there because we're sure that you are here to ask questions and make comments. Of course, the survey has been out for about a week now. And again, Sue just mentioned that the buzz on the beach is surveys, we're all just a little overwhelmed, if not more than a little, but we are thankful that we are getting some feedback, but as of today, we have only 51 members, 51 responses to the survey. So that is less than 25% of our membership. So our first commission to all of you, since we don't know who has responded and who hasn't responded, we just know what some of the responses are, and we're actually going to lead into some of that to open up discussion. Our hope for the next few info sessions, so we do have a total of 3 planned. Today, of course, next Wednesday, which is June 30th, we really wanted to get these both in before the 4th of July weekend. And then in strategizing and maximizing our time to the best of all of our ability, we thought adding on to the July 10th membership meeting, the already scheduled membership meeting, our July meeting, will be the 3rd info session. And at this time, we believe the attorney, Catherine Marion, will also be joining us on July 10th. So our investment now is to not only engage all of you, but to encourage you to reach out to, if possible, 5 of your friends and neighbors. And first encourage them, if each of you reached out to 5 people, ideally, we would have a much greater representation from our membership to be able to fully address our comments and our questions even before we meet with Catherine Marion on July 10th. So that really is step 1, aside from you being here today. The next hope from the Bylaws Committee perspective is that if, and this is a big if we could be ready to prepare and draft an amendment to the bylaws, which would need to happen by July 19th, we could plan and prepare for a vote for the August meeting. The August meeting, the membership meeting, of course, is on August 21st. That's a hypothetical right now, and that's maybe too idealistic. Maybe that's a fantasy world. There's a lot to do and a lot to discuss. However, some of the feedback we're getting is that surveys, let's get this decided. Do we need an associate membership anyway? Let's move on. If the feedback from hopefully more than 50% of our members is, yes, we are ready. We need to get this into our bylaws. We need to vote on this by August 21st. There's some work to do, especially among the Bylaws Committee, but we really can't do that work without all of you and your friends and neighbors. So in addition to everything Susan was able to present in terms of why we are where we are, especially regarding the Connecticut statutes, and that our bylaws do not have any dealing with transfer of membership, there's nothing written to clearly define that. And now we do not have any clear definition of associate membership. That is why we are here. So that is what this phase 2 is. And our hope is to lead towards a vote. If that can happen by August 21st, great. If it doesn't happen by August 21st, because we're not ready, maybe there are going to be new complex details added when we take this to the attorney. When we hear feedback from more people, there could be many layers to this that make it difficult or impossible to vote on August 21st. We could perhaps push the vote into September. Who knows what comes after that? Ideally, we could finish before winter, but maybe we'd need to take it into the winter months. Again, a lot of this depends on all of you. So I don't know if Charlie's available at this point to share a screen with all of you. He has the first slide that I was hoping to share, and that is question number 5. So those of you who took the survey, question number 5, we want to start off with you. I believe Susan's actually trying to help somebody get into the meeting. So that's a side note, but question number 5, if he can share the screen, he'll be able to bring that up. It's a screenshot that I took from the survey. And what you should be able to see is the response. So this is what, as of today, people who have responded to this question, and it was question number 5 on the survey, it is almost evenly split. And that is why we are choosing this question to start with, to kind of demonstrate where we are in the decision-making, well, in the conversation that we're trying to have, is we're 50-50. So I'll read the question. In the WAI bylaws, Article 2, Section 4, we currently have 2 classifications of membership: assessed members and associate members. Should WAI continue to have associate members? And so as you can see on the screen, we have 52% have said yes, we should continue to have associate members. However, 48% have said no. And some of the comments, yeah, go ahead.
I tried, I took the survey, and I noted I could not answer this question because I don't fully understand what is an associate member, what's the whole point of it, and explanation. So if that can be provided, I think that would be very helpful. Like,
Sure, and I'm not sure, since we're sharing a screen, I can't see who that was who was speaking.
Can I add something to that? I also tried to take the survey today. I went to the website to try and find the answer of what an associate member is, and I couldn't find an explanation on the website. So I tried taking the survey, skipping the questions I couldn't really answer, and it would not let me submit the survey results because I did not answer all the questions. So that's going to pull back some of the responses, I think. But I am also interested, what is an associate member?
That's what we're working on, trying to define together as a group what we want it to be. What you find in the bylaws is the remnants of what an associate member used to be. There's very little description and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Unfortunately, associate member was put on the membership form this year prematurely. And so it's caused a lot of confusion and led to a lot of questions. So we have to kind of backstep now and decide who should be an associate member and what rights and privileges they should have. So
But
that's
what's an
why
ID
on
one if we
this,
don't know what it is?
huh?
If we can't clearly define what one is, why should we even have one?
Well, because we have to work on it. We have to put our thoughts together and what would be the pros of having an associate member. I think there are some good reasons for having them, but we just need to decide what suits our organization right now.
I
But
think we need the
together,
definition of
we
that
will
to see
make a
what benefit they would
definition.
provide.
Okay, so I'm sorry, if, when you are talking, if you could, again, I don't know if there's a way to, because again, I can't see who's talking. Is that Tammy who was just speaking?
Yes.
Okay.
Take down the screen. Take down
Yes, and
the,
I'm just looking at I'm just looking to find a clear definition of an
Right.
associate member to see how it would benefit us, or if we should remove it entirely from the bylaws because it doesn't have importance or relevance that we need.
So that is the question. The question right now is we don't have a clear definition of what an associate member is. And as you can see from this result from the question, this again was question number 5, half of the membership is saying, or half of the people who responded are saying yes and half are saying no. So some of our past history includes that associate members were allowed to vote. And then it became clear to those who are buying associate members to buy votes that was stacking votes, and it goes back to the bylaw change, the amendment that occurred a couple of years ago, the one house, one vote. So now we're left with wording in our bylaws that address associate members, but there is no clear definition. And so that is what we're trying to do, is to decide as a membership, do we need it or don't we? And what could an associate member be? Now, I can just give an example. So for myself and my family, I have an adult daughter that lives in Vermont. And if she comes to visit 3 times a summer, she will use a beach tag. But if she were to move in for the entire summer, and if there were summer programs that she wanted her daughter, something that happened on the beach that her daughter could participate in, my granddaughter, if there were things that she was doing on a weekly basis because she moved down here for the summer, it might be beneficial for her to be an associate member. I actually thought, as a bylaw committee co-chair, I should be an associate member this year. I'm one of those people that signed on to associate membership because of my situation in my household. I am not considered an assessed member. So it would be strange to be co-chair of the bylaws committee and not be a member, I think. So by being an associate member, I'm showing my commitment to being involved. Hopefully it'd be nice if I gain something else from that instead of just paying the $25 to serve on a committee. Hopefully there's more to it than just that. So that's my example, but the point is that there are going to be many different examples, and in terms of all of us trying to figure it out, that's why we're trying to talk about this now. So what I'd like to do is open the conversation, because 25% of our membership voted and 50% said yes, approximately, and 50% said no. I'm just curious if there's anyone out there that did say, yes, we should have an associate membership like I did. If you could maybe speak on behalf of why you think there should be associate membership.
It looks like there's a question from Judy Holbrook.
My only question was, I haven't completed the survey yet because I got to the associate member part. I talked to everybody I could find. No one could give me any information about what an associate member even was imagined to be, what their rights were. All I could get was that they were charged $25 a year. So I couldn't complete the survey. So that's one of the reasons that never came in. It's an impossible thing to talk about if you don't know anything about it. And I still, even listening to you, I still don't know a single thing about what an associate member is.
Well, so to answer your question quickly, there's not a lot right now. There's not a lot to tell you. And so my hope would be that you could go back and take the survey and try to answer the questions to the best of your ability, but then write in the comment box. If you could comment on it and explain exactly what you're saying, but to the specific question, because there are several questions that address, associate members getting some benefits. Again, if there are other people who have already voted on it and would like to, contribute to the conversation, that might be helpful.
That's asking every single person who responds to the survey to invent what the associate member is. I mean, I'm kind of flummoxed by this one. I don't get it. I'm sorry.
If you have associate members, it'll create a second tier of membership. The
Right.
cost is not very high, but there are people who want to be a member, an official member, or they want to be more involved in maybe the governance of the association. They want to hold an office. They want to be on committees because they really have the commitment and they want to get involved at a deeper level. There have been suggestions besides holding office that they get special privileges for social events, adult social events where they could bring a guest.
Yeah, some of the questions specifically address those types of scenarios that are not clearly defined right now. So by participating in the survey, earlier I said voting, I didn't mean to say vote, I'm sorry, but by participating in the survey and making your suggested answer and then commenting on it, it will at least help us to understand what people think an associate member could be, or that it shouldn't exist at all. Again, we are around 50-50 right now based on those who have responded. So that's why this conversation is so important.
Thank you.
This is Robert Perry. I have one background question and one comment. The background question is, we have 2 badges and we are in 35 New Shore Road. My daughter lives in Chicago. If she visits with her fiance and wants to visit the beach with my wife, we can use 2 badges. And as far as I know, pay $2 for a guest. Is that correct?
I think since COVID happened, there are no longer guest badges. There weren't any last year, and I don't believe there are any this year available. And that was related to COVID.
I can jump in quickly on that. Currently, the decision not to have guest passes is still in force from last season. Our bylaws do say that we're supposed to sell guest passes. So it's definitely something, the board will consider. As far as them being $2, I don't know what the cost would be. But, guest passes currently not available, could become available.
All right, that kind of impacts whether or not we need associate members as to whether or not you can buy a guest pass, but we'll go on from there. The comment I have is, having been in a number of volunteer organizations, you never, ever turn away a volunteer. Somehow you always find a way to include them. So for social events like the party last Friday, or helping in the governance, I would strongly recommend having associate members to give a volunteer a way to be a full participant.
Thank you for those comments.
I also think that, if people have the time to look at the bylaws, the key sections, which, they've noted, Article 2 is membership. It says, you know, residents of or owners of property in Waterford or in Pleasure Beach. You know, members have a certain age. After they're 8, you need a badge. So, and then there's a part about guests and transfer of badges. And traditionally, if your neighbor is eligible to be an assessment member, you can't share a membership with them and give them your badges. That's considered transfer of badges. However, you can have guests use your badges, extra badges. I think that, you know, part of the confusion is this year, we have a $25 fee for an extra badge, and we have a $25 fee for an associate membership. And for some people, that might be redundant. And, you know, the lack of definition is definitely something that has come up. But I think that a part of the problem is that other residual language in the bylaws as well, with transferability and guests and who's a guest and who's an associate member. Do you live there? Do we really want to be in the business of policing who lives in what house for what portion of the year and what the familiar relationship is?
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
I'm also wondering, are we now assuming that only the person on the deed is the member? And if you're married, that person is no longer a member. They have to pay an extra $25 to be an associate member? Because that's not what we used to be talking about when I was on the Bylaws Committee. Right. It's getting ridiculous that now only the person on a deed is considered a member. And anybody else is not considered a member and has to pay an extra $25 plus whatever they pay for badges, which is the way it started to sound like this year. And Sarah, that's basically what you were saying. Well, that you paid the associate member fee for yourself. And I'm wondering, why did you do that?
So I will explain. In my situation, we are 2 couples living under one roof. My husband's parents, we have recently moved into their house. So we're 2 sets of adults living under one roof. It's a slightly different scenario. So I am not the assessed member, but I feel like there are some special circumstances where an associate membership can help, in my case, give me a stronger sense of membership by virtue of the name. And so to address your question, Gail, yes, this is definitely something we need to talk about because it's not clear. My understanding has been that an assessed member, the assessed member or owner or person whose name is on the deed or whatever we're doing to define that, has a guest associated with that, whether it's a married person or the person living under the roof or however we define that. So I always assumed an assessed member could have a guest, but then like in my
What do you mean? What are you talking about, a guest? What are you saying?
like a spouse.
No.
I mean, people are starting to feel like they're less than somehow because their name isn't actually on the deed. And that only had to do with who votes, not who's a member.
I cannot hear the whole question because of hearing disability, but husband and wife, I have been a member of Pleasure Beach for 55 years. Husband and wife definitely, we're both members. I do not have to be an associate member. I am a member because I am part of, right? So,
right, but a lot of people are being told that that's not the case. And that's what I'm trying to clear up now. That it's not just the person who has the right to vote, who may or may not be on the deed. It's the people who live in that household. And that has to be cleared up because that's a confusion that everybody's having right now. I mean, I live alone, so that's not my issue, but it's an issue that it shouldn't just be the person whose name is on a deed and that we're going to police how somebody owns their property. I mean, do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
This is something.
Yeah, and I guess I
misspoke
by saying guest, but what I was not clear of is that we have a one household, one vote rule too.
Right.
So that adds a layer of complication. So, and not all spouse situations or not all partners are legally married. So that's
I don't think
not
that should
right,
matter,
right. It
whether you're
shouldn't.
legally
So-
married or.
Right. So my point is that there's going to be a person who is named the assessed member and someone who might go with that person, whatever we're calling them, equally an assessed member,
The bylaws say that,
partner. Yeah. Okay. So I'm being updated that the bylaws say that in that case, they're both assessed members, but there still is only one vote
Right.
from that household. So just to clarify that in case there were any questions.
But I don't think that is clear across the entire association. I don't think that's clear.
I think you're right. I think you're correct. And that's one of the reasons we are trying to address that this year. And we need your input. There is so much confusion. I looked at my past, I have them back to 2012, my membership sign up. And until this year, I have never seen anything for an associate member for an extra $25. So
Right.
it has caused confusion to me also. And that's why we need to clarify this. And do we need it? Do we need to associate a fee with it? There are so many complications with this and so many different understandings that we need your input so that we can clearly, if we are going to have an associate member, we have to be able to clearly define what that means.
First, you have to make sure that everybody knows what member means. And they
Yes,
don't get that confused with voting member. We did pass that, who the voting member was in a household, but that's not the same as a member. And I think people are confusing those terms. So it's making like two people in a household feel like, oh, one of them's the actual assessed member and the other one, oh, then has to be the associate member. And that was never the intent. And it's not, it's legally not what we did. So I think that needs to be clarified before you go into who's whether or not we need to have associate members. And who, if we do, who they would apply to. That's the confusion I keep hearing on the beach.
There is a tremendous amount of confusion and it's not clear. I can't say how but I definitely think that we have to define this before anything goes any further.
As I said earlier, it should not even have been on the form this year
Thank you.
because
Yeah.
Right.
because of the confusion and the lack of definition. It doesn't mean it's a useless category, though. I mean, there could be benefits associated with it that are good and special privileges. It's not, I don't mean to want to toss it in the water or something, but I think it just needs work. And we would like to hear from you people, what kind of privileges you think.
It's just it's very hard in a survey form. I tried to take the survey myself. And when you ask a question that already presumes that there are associate members and you have to answer yes or no, I also tried to take the survey and just answer my concerns, and it wouldn't let me do that. I had to answer yes or no. Well, you can't answer complex questions, as we can see right now, with a yes or a no. It doesn't, frankly, I don't think we should, frankly, I don't even think there is a legitimate associate member in our bylaws right now. So to me that, you can't even answer the question. But
well, in my case, I answered that I did not want an associate member in the organization. However, I also answered in the comments that and we have to remember, it's a majority vote. It's not up to me or any one other person. We need your comments. If we say over 50% of the association wants to have an associate member, then we need to define that. So I answered saying if 50% would vote to have the associate member, then the definition has to be there. And I put my comments in for what I thought should be included in that.
I have a question.
I just addressed supposing.
How can you talk about,
Oh, wait, Judy's gonna speak, but
Go ahead, Judy.
just, oh, go ahead.
how can you talk, I kind of agree, someone said a little ago that first you have to sort of talk about what a member is, because you can't have a category unless you have a need. Usually a category comes from some kind of a need, you know, a gap that needs to be filled. For example, you know, I want to be an associate so I can serve. That's a good reason, but it's hard for the rest of us to talk about something that we don't know whether there's a need for. There's so much, the membership question is so nebulous as it is that it's unclear even to some people what that involves, and no one can tell us what an associate is actually is for. Okay, it's a reason for something, you know, and it's having 50% of the population voting for something that's not defined, and so we're building the definition around behind them.
Mhm.
Really odd for an organization. It's going to put it right back on shaky ground again.
Well, the goal of this time and these info sessions is to get this feedback from you. So my question to those of you who are in attendance earlier is that, are there any people here who voted in favor of I'm sorry, I'm saying voting. There's a lot of other distractions going on right now. Did anybody take the survey who was present at the meeting tonight and actually clicked yes in the survey? And if you did, could you just speak on that? I feel like I gave an example, and even though it might not be clear, I'm glad I can become an associate member. Charlie, you're also an associate member. Maybe you can speak on that. I don't want to put you on the spot, but
And Pat does agree.
I have to just say, I don't think it's fair to ask people how they voted.
No,
I just didn't know if anybody had a comment
No.
about.
saying-
Again, it's not voting. I'm sorry.
No, it is not voting. And in my household, I have a daughter that lives with us. I didn't believe, and I'm on the fence about all of this. My daughter feels very strongly. She wants to be an associate member because in her opinion, it means that she's more committed to it than just to the whole organization, and maybe at some point might want to get involved. That's her opinion. It's not everybody's, hers. She said, Mom, please put me in as an associate. So that's an example. It doesn't mean that anyone else has to agree with that, but I did it because she wants to prove I'm committed.
As a membership, we're being asked to
She's not a member.
agree or disagree with a category that's saying for $25 you can be an associate member, okay? And the rest of us who are actually in the organization is like, okay, so what are, you know, what's that category? How is that different? You know?
Correct.
It's odd. It just feels very odd. I mean, why have the distinction if the what's the difference? What is the distinction?
Why don't you ask people what might be gained by being an associate member, if they have any ideas about what could be gained by being an associate member?
I think Sarah Szymanski has a comment.
Questions 6, 7, and 8 in the survey, and a few others as well, do that. They provide sort of hypotheticals and kind of ask about, you know, where can an associate member live? Do they have to be within the boundaries or not? You know, all these kind of details that were in the questions that extended beyond question 5. Again, we're just putting out what we have heard from the membership as being some of the key points. So it's very difficult to present a survey that's trying to get definitive responses from you. And that is why a yes or no answer is asked. I guess if you are not in favor of it, your answer would be no. And then we're just asking that you explain that.
And another,
Sarah Szymanski's had her hand up for a couple minutes.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. We can't see more than a couple people on their screens. So thank you, Charlie.
Sure. Thank you, guys. I voted to have associate members, and I did explain, you know, I know yes and no were the only choices, but I did say yes. And then I further explained saying that obviously the associate members need to be better defined and the benefits of being an associate member need to be better defined. But the reason that I voted for yes is that the way the current bylaws are written for assessed members is that transfer of membership ends when somebody dies, when the assessed member dies. So my feeling is that as an associate member, if you were the spouse of or a child of, that if you were an associate member, then maybe you could take over that membership and, you know, not lose the membership with the death of the assessed member. So lots of these, you know, kind of examples are not clearly defined yet, but that's the way I interpreted it. And that's why I voted yes to having associate members.
Can I piggyback on that?
Question from Heather.
So I agree with everything Sarah said, and I think I voted exactly the same way that Sarah just described. In addition, my significant other does not live with me. He lives in Rhode Island. He has no ownership to this house. And I felt like for a members only event, he should be an associate member. He clearly is with me at the beach on the weekends and when he's not working and so forth. So I felt like in addition to everything that Sarah just described, that it also gives him the benefit of going to the members only event without me paying the non-member fee. I don't. Oh, go ahead.
I'll just
There's also a
mention
question
one
from
little
Tammy.
point. We haven't gotten to the part of the bylaws that describes who can be an officer. So this also, if it's part of an associate membership, could feed into that and provide the answers, part of the answer to who can be officers or committee chair.
Who can be a what? We haven't gotten the part of the bylaws that said who could be what? We couldn't hear.
Officers who
Officers.
can be allowed to run for office and hold office or be chairpersons and chair committee members.
Would I be able to mention something for just a moment?
Sure.
In what I've heard from everyone, first of all, is there even a possibility that the survey could go out again and just take out this one piece, that this one question that may have prevented a lot of the survey that could have a lot of value right now to be fully completed? I see that it's great if we're talking about associate members. I think that's wonderful. I'm not, saying we shouldn't talk about it, but I think there's so much to be defined before we get to this part. And I think it's preventing value in the survey to get to all the other stuff that we want to accomplish right now. Because I would have finished this, and many people already said they would have finished it. I don't think even the no's are against associate members at this point. And the yeses, I don't think are fully yeses. They're saying they like the idea, and maybe the no's don't like the idea because they don't know about it. But until there's a clear definition, an associate member gets this, doesn't get this, gets this. And I think we need everyone's valuable feedback on that truly defined before someone can truly vote yes or no. I don't think it has value doing a yes or no at this point, because like people said, even the yeses, well, if we can get this, this, and this, there's still too much to define before it can be anything in a survey.
Absolutely. That actually is the point of the survey. And that was our hope. So that's something to definitely.
All right, with the bylaws committee, I can remove the required answer from the yes, no, should we have associate member question.
That would be wonderful, because I think it's great conversation to have, but not at this point. I think there needs to be more discussion on defining it so people have knowledge of exactly what they're voting for or really talking about.
Well, so just to reiterate, we can't be voting until the membership defines this. That is our job. That's what we're doing right now. We have to define this. It is in our bylaws, associate members, the wording is repeated multiple times in our bylaws currently.
Then just have discussions on defining it at this point and just don't even have it as part of a survey, because we can't do a survey on something that isn't been defined yet. So more meetings like this to talk about it and get surveys of what they think are ideas, but not in a survey right now. I don't think it's at that point yet.
So in the survey, following question number 5, for those of you who have not taken it yet or didn't complete it, we will encourage you to go back and do that. And as Charlie said, we can modify it so you can submit your answers. And please comment on it, and so that we have some written feedback of your explanation to the best of your ability, and any suggestions you feel should be attached to associate membership. But also the following questions do create sort of hypothetical scenarios. Should associate members be able to? There are 3 or 4 questions like that. So yes, this is our first meeting, our first info session about this. And we knew that we'd be, a little bit uncertain, or more than a little uncertain about a lot of what we're discussing, which again leads us back to, please not only participate yourselves, but get your friends and neighbors to do it as well. Because if we can come back here next Wednesday and continue the conversation, our intention is that we're going to share with you the link so that you can see the survey responses. So you can see the comments, and that will be coming in the next couple of days. So, there'll be a reminder of next Wednesday's meeting, which is June 30th. And then a link so that you can see how people are responding. And we're certainly hoping there'll be more than 51 participants at that time. We would like to go forward. We've got about 10 minutes left here, and we want to talk about transfer of membership. That's the other hot topic that is on the survey. That is the hot topic of this this phase 2 of the Bylaws Committee goals, and very critically necessary discussions that we're having that you are participating in right now. So Charlie, again, you have that screenshot of the question. And this was actually question number 1 in the survey. So when that comes up, we can, I think he's with the baby. No, I see him. Oh, he's looking at his screen. Okay, so this was the first question. Again, this has to do with transfer of membership. Please keep in mind, only 51 members responded to this question. So we're at about 25%, a quarter of our membership responding. So again, not necessarily a true representation of everyone's opinion, but we thought this was particularly interesting considering how many people responded yes, which is at 96%. Should a WAI membership transfer to anyone who inherits a property? And we listed this could include lineal descendants, other relatives, friends, or an entity such as a trust or LLC. So again, 96% of those who participated said yes. We just wanted to open up the conversation. Again, we're not making any decisions on this right now or today, but those of you who are here, present, participating, we'd like your feedback on this. I know you care, so let's hear from you.
Of course. So this is Margaret Spencer, Margaret Marin Spencer.
Right.
We of course support that because we love the community. My kids are 4th generation going there. Of course, that's what we want because that's why we go every summer and why we own a house there. I hope someone else can chime in and agree with me.
I do agree with you that this-
There's
Robert
a
Carey.
question from Kristen Mahoney.
Yeah, so this is actually very pertinent to me right now because my father passed away and I've been going to this beach for about 40 years and I inherited the house. The deed is now in my name. And so I, of course, want the membership because if I didn't get the membership, then what would I do? I sit at my house all summer and not be able to be a member of the beach? Like, I just don't understand how that would work. Now, I think, and I wrote this in my comments in the survey, that you know, it should transfer if somebody takes over the house and then they own the house. So I currently own the house now. So, and I am on the deed. So that would make me an assessed member. And I would hate if I would lose my membership just because of a, you know, I've been with my mom and dad coming to this beach since I was little. Both my parents have passed away and the house is now mine. So I, of course, want to continue my membership. It means a lot to me and my family. And so I voted yes, absolutely. And I hope that that's something that we could, you know, definitely have in the bylaws and have it work out. Now, if you sell the house, of course, I think whoever moves into the house would have to start a new membership. But if you are family and you have inherited the house and are now on the deed, I think you absolutely should get the membership.
100% agree.
The
That
only
was
thing
great.
I will add, if I may, and this, I am also a lawyer, so I'm probably speaking out of turn because maybe I should keep my mouth shut as a lawyer. But I will say that sometimes it's just not so quickly added on the deed. And and it's all worked out. Like, you know, it doesn't always work out that way. And so I think we should be mindful of next generations that really want the family to inherit the house and continue the generations of the enjoyment of Pleasure Beach, but at the same time, maybe didn't have the wherewithal or the foresight to really plan it out. And so they might have a little bump in the deed issue. And that I think is going to be an issue for some people if they don't have like family planning.
It is an issue, but that's why we're doing this. We don't want to force families to have to put all their heirs on a deed. There are disadvantages in some situations for that also having, but that's why we want it in the bylaws and we want it clear and spelled out. And we don't want to discriminate. We don't want to say you have to leave it to your children and that's the only way you're going to get an inherited membership. We have to, I think, leave it open to whoever inherits the property. Now that might mean changing your will, but I think it's better than requiring people to change the deed. And that would normally happen in most estate administration processes anyways. But as you say, you don't want to lose your spot, so to speak.
I just think it's an important consideration and it doesn't have to be decided right now. But as a lawyer and my father being a lawyer and my children being fourth or maybe even fifth generation, I don't even know what they are as the Marins. I just don't want them to lose their spot as having the memories of going to that beach just because even as a lawyer, I messed up. It's like the cobbler who doesn't have shoes for their kids. Like I just never thought it would come to this. And I'm not gonna be sneaky about it, but I'm a little bummed that this is one of my major issues right now with my family is that maybe I made a mistake and I'm really bummed that there's a waiting list and all this is going on and something so important is going to go on the wayside.
But it won't if people decide they want this to happen.
We have to amend
It'll
the
be in the
bylaws.
bylaws, an amendment, and it will state clearly how membership can be inherited. And
I think it's important. And I'm just saying, I'll go to crazy lengths to fix this. I will. I'll lose my mind. But I don't think it's going to come to that. I think that we can do the right thing. And if you own the property and the property goes to family members, I also understand that people buy houses and they bought houses understanding that they were going to be members of the beach. And I support that as well. But I don't want there to be an issue with my family just because maybe I didn't put someone's name on the deed. And then all of a sudden on a technicality, my kids lost out on, the 5th generation of having a swim out to the raft.
Can somebody define entity? Well, I'm asking because does that mean somebody can leave their property to any association if they don't have children? They could leave it to
The Eugene O'Neill.
well, the Eugene O'Neill or something that may not be quite as palatable, let's say. So that several different people or organizations are using that one piece of property. It's one thing talking about passing the property from family member to family member to family member, but this sounds like it could be, you could leave your property to anyone or any organization, and our association couldn't do anything about it. So there could be several families or several things you. And I'm not talking about an LLC. I'm talking about an entity.
Right, like a charitable organization, I think you're talking about.
Well, yeah, you could call it a charitable organization, but there are other organizations that might not be charitable.
Right. Well, I don't think we can control who someone leaves their property to.
We
period.
can if we define this differently.
Well, maybe we have to explore this as a separate question under the bigger heading.
I mean, it could be that you can leave your property to lineal descendants, relatives, friends, or LLC or something without making it quite as broad as this is right now.
Right.
And I think most people are reading this as, oh, my children will be able to inherit my property. That's what people are reading this as. And people do want that. But I don't think they're looking at how broad this actually is.
Unless the entity such as a trust or LLC could be removed, then it goes to really the true descendants, the relatives. But then when you get into entities, trusts and LLCs, it's not the main point.
Well, I just get concerned about, somebody leaving it to whomever that.
You need to say what you mean. You clearly have something on your mind here. What are you worried about?
I'm just saying, it's one thing talking about the Eugene O'Neill because we all see that as a nice organization. But even the Eugene O'Neill, if they were going to have various people using that property over and over and over, that's going to change the nature of our community.
Now you're talking about limiting who you can leave your property to your approval, or who you can sell your property to.
I'm trying to avoid that. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to avoid that.
Personal line there, really, that's going to get really messy.
Is it? I mean, to say that you can't leave it to an organization, I don't think that changes. I think by leaving it, saying it's okay to leave it to an organization, I think that changes our community. Because right now we're talking families and community. An organization changes what our community has been.
But an organization is not currently a member anyway. We don't have an organization as a member. So it needs to be the relatives or friends, actual people who we currently allow as members, that you could leave your property to anyone. I can leave my property to McDonald's. But that doesn't mean that I transferred my ownership, my membership on to the beach.
Well, that's what this is saying, that you transfer your property to McDonald's. Now McDonald's is going to be a member of our beach.
So we'd have to drop off the or entity such as trust because they can't be members now anyway. Yeah. So obviously they couldn't be members in the future.
I'm just saying we need to define. I'm saying we need to define that because That's what I'm.
Trying to ask it a legal.
I think it needs to boil down to some steps here where you're talking about a very broad thing in issues that could occur. First, we have to define whether or not property, whether legal descendants, legal heirs of a property can become members, okay? This doesn't mean that things can't be adjusted. Like if the issue becomes, if the company thing becomes an obvious issue, then more language can be added. But to fight over, McDonald's right now, when we're still trying to decide whether or not this is even going to be inheritable, it's like the associate member thing. It's putting the cart.
Well, I disagree. I think that should be in the language now so that people do know exactly what they are voting for in this amendment. I think everybody is seeing this as we're voting on whether we want to transfer our property to our lineal descendants, which is how everybody's responding to this question. But I think the nature of this question is including far more than that. So we could be, in fact, creating a problem down the road.
Yeah.
I am a lawyer also. So, I mean, this is just, I anticipate problems that could arise. And I think that's something that, I mean, if that's what everybody votes on, that's what they vote on, but I think they should know what they're voting on. That's all I'm saying.
I think part of the problem here is maybe my lack of a legal mind. On the original survey, I tried to encapsulate estate planning within a family as entity. I thought that was the proper thing to say. But I think, Gail, that you're right. An entity does have a much broader definition than how I meant it. So, another solution is, this question could be 2 or 3 different questions as well. And these questions in the survey, this voting is not official. It's really just to get engagement. And this is not necessarily how the amendment will be written. It's really just to get a sense of where the membership wants to head. So, I'll take responsibility for that little bit of confusion.
Okay.
Thank you. So we're after 8 o'clock right now. Are there any people who have been waiting patiently to say something who have not been able to say something yet and would like to before we close out?
I have one question. Is the next Zoom going to be dealing with membership as well?
Yes, the next meeting on Wednesday is continuing this conversation. So it's Wednesday, June 30th at 7 p.m. And we are going to continue based on feedback from all of you. We'll decide how to proceed. And certainly you can bring your questions again. These 2 sessions are, of course, leading up to our meeting with the attorney, Catherine Marion, and will hopefully prepare us to gain some concrete feedback from her.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. You did a wonderful job. Thank you so much.
I wanted
This is Margaret Marin Spencer saying, you guys, I know it's a lot, we have a lot of wood to chop, but thank you for doing the work.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say, I'm going to ask if we can put our email addresses on the website somewhere, because we also would encourage you, if you want to write a note or write an email to anyone on our committee, to please do so, because the survey has a lot of, it's very valuable, but it also has a lot of limitations.
So what's the best way to do that?
I think if I asked Charlie, he could find a place to put our names and our emails, probably under the Bylaws Committee. Our names may be there, but let's add the emails.
Why don't you put them out with the next email itself? So just at the bottom of the email.
But I'll also list them on the governance page, wherever like the bylaws and the officers are listed. I can list the chair people and the committee members' email addresses as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. You guys have been great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your participation, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Have a good week.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Right.